Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Mental Mondays on Intuitive Angling, and thank you much for checking today's video out. And for all the regulars, you guys know what the deal is here. And if you're new to the channel, Mental Mondays is something we do once a week that usually just as that, something to stretch your mind. Usually doesn't have anything to do about fishing, but I really enjoy doing them. And we got a pretty loyal following here, even though it's smaller than the regular videos. So welcome if it's your first time to Mental Mondays. Guys, today we're going to be talking about a message that I have for any elected politician in this country. Now, you probably noticed over the course, if you guys have been big followers of Mental Mondays, you probably noticed the last 6 months that I have interjected the topic of politics, not necessarily opinions on politics, but just the overall genre of politics into Mental Mondays. And I've done that specifically for a reason, because when we're talking about the mental well-being of, and that's sort of what this channel is about, it's sort of to help everybody's mental well-being. When you're talking about that, modern politics has a huge role in that, because with the advent of social media and the advent of 24/7 coverage on different media outlets, politics affects people mentally. I'm going to guess probably more than about any other topic out there. When you talk about something that generates emotions from people, all range of emotions, politics is probably at the top of the list. And it has, depending upon how you deal with that and how you handle it and how stable mentally you are or not, it can have a huge impact on the mental well-being of any person. I mean, there's people that commit murders over political beliefs and affiliations. There's people that get divorces. There's people that alienate families. I mean, it's a big problem, and I want to get into that with a message to our elected officials. First of all, if you guys have seen the channel, you know I don't have a lot of respect for politicians. Not all of them, because there are some quality politicians out there. I measure the quality of a politician by how selfless they are, the morals they have, the integrity they have, the honesty, the empathy they have. In other words, just being a good human being. That's how I equate a politician. I don't have any patience for power-hungry, narcissistic, lying, unethical, just too many of the politicians we have seen surface, especially over the past 7 or 8 years. So anyway, here's my message to the politicians out there, and sort of my advice to the country in general as far as moving forward with politics. We have got a completely broken political system in terms of the people that we assign power to. We have given power to way too many people the past 6 or 7 years that do not deserve positions of power. We have given positions of power to politicians that they couldn't get a minimum wage job somewhere with the credentials that they have. They basically have risen to notoriety through outrageous statements, through being, firebrands, through creating culture wars, to be having a divisive personality to them, like a us versus them type deal. And those are the toxic politicians, big time. So here is my advice to the politicians and sort of what we need to do with it. First of all, we've got to get money out of politics. And that's a very difficult thing to do, because money influences politics. It's nearly impossible in 2023, from about the last 10 years or so. It's impossible to get elected into any position. I don't care if it's a local or state position or national, unless you are rich or have rich friends or have financial backing behind you. That is the most sickening thing about politics today, is money has created this power structure within politics. And what happens is, since money has such an influence and agendas and lobbying groups, you have politicians that are beholden to a lot of special interest groups, and you see that in their voting records. I mean, you can see that straight across the board, because one thing politicians can't hide is their voting record on particular issues. Now here is how we get better politicians, and here is my message to politicians out there. First of all, there shouldn't be any corporate donations allowed to any politician, period. Corporations have no business in politics whatsoever. Politics should be local. It should be something that if somebody likes a politician and they want to help them out, let's put a $20 cap per person on donations. One-time donation of $20. That's all you can do. And then at that point, you've got more of a level playing field with that. That requires, once you do that, that sort of requires people to sort of go have sort of the old time politicians where you have to actually meet people in person, you have to knock on doors, you have to go out and work for it and show that you deserve to be put in that position of power. And another thing about that is once somebody is actually elected to a position of power, here is one of the biggest problems I have with modern politics and how you politicians, if there's any politicians watching this, you guys suck, if you do this, you suck, is that once you get elected into a position of power, you completely ignore your constituency, completely. It's just like you don't have anything to do with them. I can't tell you how many times, because if I have something I disagree with on a state or national level, I call the offices of whatever politician. Guys, you can't get through. You might as well just forget about it, because if you try to call, you'll get some answering machine and you'll never get through, or you'll get a busy signal. It's impossible to do that. That is by design. And if you do take the time to write an email, they don't ever read your email. All they do is you get some canned generic response back. Thank you for taking time to support blah, 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 blah. We appreciate your feedback. It's a bunch of crap. It really is out there. So in my opinion out there, number one is that if politicians are elected into positions of power and they do not keep in contact with their constituency, they should be kicked out of office. They should be required to personally interact on a regular basis, like once a month, with their constituency. Let's say, for example, you're a state representative for the district that you live in. They should be required by law to have a public town meeting once a month, open to the public, as big as you want to be. They need to stay there. I don't care if it's until 4 o'clock in the morning to answer every single question that a constituent answers. And they should not be allowed to gaslight any answer. If somebody asks them a pointed question and they don't want to answer that question, they try to redirect it to another them, kick them out of office. That's not what politics is about. That's that gaslighting and trying to change the subject is what gives politics and politicians a bad name. Next thing out there, pay them minimum wage. You pay these politicians the same minimum wage that they vote against raising for the hardworking people every day out there. You don't give them any benefits, just like you don't give minimum wage people benefits. You don't give them any pension. You don't give them any retirement. You pay them minimum wage, and you have term limits. You have term limits of no more than 4 years. You serve 4 years and you don't serve any more the rest of your life out there. What that does, that puts people that want to be in positions of influence in government that are true servants of the people, because they cannot benefit financially anyway. You have to take any type of avenue for them to generate money from their political position away from that. And once you do that, once you take the money out of it, then you have the pure good people that want to serve. But right now, politics is just a gravy train. That's why you see these politicians, that some of these senators that have been in position, they've been in power for 50 years, or some of these nut job House members out there, because they have gerrymandered districts. The parties that are in power have gerrymandered these districts, and they've drawn the lines to ensure that the same people are going to get reelected every single time. That's why they can be crazy. That's why they can say outlandish stuff. That's why they can get away with things that people can't get away, because they're in a safe district out there. We have to get rid of that. Most ridiculous thing in the world. Another thing with that is we have to institute penalties for politicians that go far beyond, or not far beyond, but beyond the normal citizens, because we ought to expect more out of our politicians. We do not send our best politicians to represent us. I can assure you right now, guys, there's about 25% of the politicians that I know in this country, and I've met quite a few of them, that are good, decent people. They have morals, they have ethics, they have empathy, they're honest. They truly want to make the world a better place. They don't have any intention on gaining power and profit for themselves. And then you got 75% of those people out there that don't have any business whatsoever to be, and you guys know who they are. You can tell. I mean, you can tell who is power hungry. You can tell who gaslights. You can tell who tries to create divisions and everything with that. That's all pre-rehearsed, and geared towards one particular end. So from that standpoint, it's like we have got to demand more of our politicians than anything else out there. Another one out there, guys, is there needs to be stricter qualifications to become an elected official. It's like, if you've been accused of a crime, a credible accusation of a crime, or if you've committed a crime, or if you've done shady stuff, or if you've been accused of, of some type of inappropriate behavior, that should immediately disqualify for somebody from being in political office. We need to have people in positions of power that our children can look up to. That should be one of the biggest things out there. Somebody that's admirable and honest and courageous and ethical and moral. And I don't talk about moral from a religious standpoint. I'm talking about doing the right thing. I'm talking about somebody that's kind to animals, somebody that, does something for the benefit of others without expecting anything out of it. Somebody that, helps the disadvantaged and the poor. People that put other people ahead of themselves with that. And another thing out there is we have to have people in positions of power. And you politicians that listen to this, if you feel that you want to stay into politics to hold on to power, you have no business doing that. We live in a fragile democracy. The United States of America is basically, our democracy is an experiment. And while we may not be the most perfect, country that we can be, we're still probably the best out there because our experiment has held on by a thread, mind the way, recently, as far as the last 6 or 7 years, because there's been a lot of authoritarian, totalitarian type influences in our politics that threaten to undermine democracy. But people don't realize, people take for granted the country that we have. And how that is maintained is people have to look at politics and people have to look at positions of power as stewards. They are not meant to be there forever. They are meant to be there for a small portion of time and then hand it off to the next person that is elected by the people, and just be temporary stewards of that position. And right now we have a political system that is just, it is so messed up on so many different levels, and it's perpetuated by the people that remain in power out there. I mean, the problem that you have is if you got a senator or congressperson that's been in power for a long time, they don't want to give that power up. And they're never going to vote for any type of initiative to limit that power. They're not going to do it. And until we can get past that to where until people see those positions as something to be honored, and there's something they should see that as one of the greatest honors anybody could have, to represent people in this country and do the right thing for those people. It's never going to get any better with that. So I don't know, guys. It's like I try to be optimistic with that, but the more that I have seen what has happened here recently over the last 7 or 8 years in our country with that, we've got some real challenges out there. And a big problem with that is a lot of people don't pay attention to that. I hear a lot of people say out there, well, I don't pay any I don't pay any attention to politics. It's not that big of a deal to me. It ought to be a big deal to you, because so many things in your life and your children's life and the future that we have in this country are directly affected by legislation. I don't care if it's environmental legislation, if it's some type of social programs, if it's defense, if it's science or whatever like that. It has a direct influence on your life out there. And most people don't pay attention to the voting records of the politicians and hold those people accountable to that. A lot of people get their politics from memes. They get it from social media. They get it from Twitter. They don't get it from legitimate news sources that back up voting records and have detailed information on the activities of every single politician out there. And finally, guys, one of the things out there is that we live in such a divided country right now that there are some political parties out there. You could literally put a rock up on the ballot and 45% of the people would vote for that rock. Tribal politics is one of the worst things our country has fell into. And what happens in tribal politics is people tend to vote for personalities. They tend to vote for people that they like, and they ignore everything about the qualifications that person has. They look past imperfections, and they look past things in the quality of that human being that they would never give a pass to anyone else. And until we get past that tribal politics and start putting people in positions of power, again, that are qualified, that have proven themselves to be qualified, that are verified, that are honest, they have integrity, they have empathy, they have critical thinking skills. That is what makes a great leader. And we've had great leaders throughout the course of our country in the past. And I have noticed a trend, like I said, the last 6 or 7 years, where the quality of our political candidates has extremely deteriorated. And it's deteriorated because of social media. Because what happens is you have some of these politicians out there, and I call them firebrands, because they like to say crazy crap and get people all fired up and riled up, and they say stuff without having any facts to back it up. And that gets people riled up, and that gets a segment of the base, that gets a segment of a fanatical base to vote for those people that are in essence voting against their own best interest. Because I can promise you, when you have a firebrand politician and you have somebody that intentionally tries to create division, they're in it for themselves. They're not in it to help serve the people out there whatsoever. But until we take power away from politicians, until we start holding them accountable and not letting them get away with that, and if they abuse that power that they have, then they are held liable, whether it be criminally or whatever. We're going to continue to have a deterioration in our democracy and the future of our country out there. And another thing about that is, since I said that 45% of the people out there would vote for a rock over a tribal politic on another politician, is that we have got to have politicians out there that don't have this mentality of winner take all. Okay, most elections are close, and they always will be. Most elections are like 51-48. If one party wins an election, that particular politician should not discredit 48% of the population just because they receive 5,000 more votes or whatever like that. Everybody's voice should be heard and taken into account, even if they may not agree with it. You can still push your initiatives that you have that you think are important through, but you also have to throw everybody else a bone. And you just can't, people that win and say, okay, we won, screw you guys, we're going to do what we want to do. That is not working out there. That is not the way to do it. It's not the democratic American way to do it. And that goes for both sides. It doesn't really make any difference. But to wrap it up a little bit, guys, or talking about politicians, if you guys can hear me, you guys know when you're doing something wrong. You know when you're sacrificing your spine and your integrity out there to satisfy your special interest group, or you know when you're trying to rile up your base and saying stuff that's crazy and off the wall that's not backed up by any fact, just cut it out. That's you're un-American by doing that. You are anti-American for that type of behavior. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on the thing out there, guys. Like I said, in a perfect world, I would make a lot of different changes in politics, because right now it's really screwed up. I can assure you. So anyway, guys, hope you guys are doing good. We'll talk later.